also from Berlin. You are, I have to click here, you are a professor for political sciences at the Free University of Berlin, and you published several books and numerous articles about European topics. And you are also working as a consultant and coach for European affairs. And you know Moldova from many visits. Welcome, Eckhard, and it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Julian Gröger. We met the first time in 2008 when you were a lecturer for the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Service in Moldova. Since then, we have been in contact, and you spent many years working in Moldova, and since 2017, you are living there permanently. You are the co-founder and president of the biggest environmental NGO in the country, Ecovisio. You are the managing director of Moldova's German-speaking business association, and you are a representative of the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Moldova. And right now you are on a business trip in Georgia. Welcome, Julian.
Bună seara. Thank you.
When we planned this event, our starting point was that actually very few people in Bremen and in Germany know anything about Moldova. So we decided that I'll give you a very brief introduction to the country, and I've prepared some slides. Afterwards, we will begin with our panel discussion, and then you, the attendees, are invited also to join our discussion. We have scheduled 90 minutes for our event, so to finish at about 8 o'clock German time. So if you want to participate later, please raise your hand, or you can, the button here, the icon is on the right side down of the Zoom display here, or you can write something in the chat and comment and ask questions there. And please mute your microphone now during the discussion. I would like now to start with my presentation, which is about 10 minutes. It's very brief and summarizing, and please forgive me if it might be in parts too bold and too simple. Oops. Okay, yeah. It happened already here without something doing by me. It's okay. I'm here. Johanna, it was fine. I saw it already on my screen. Again. No, I will do that. Johanna, I would like.
I think, yeah, the best would be if you take over the screen.
Yeah, please. That was a misunderstanding. So that's my screen now. So. Yeah, the Republic of Moldova has the distinction of being both Europe's poorest country and its least visited in Europe. But in 2005, the Eurovision Song Contest brought Moldova with its first representation on stage to international attention. And it made a remarkable place 6, and in 2017 even place 3. And this year at least place 18, definitely much better than Germany's last place. And for English speakers, Moldova might be known through the novel of the English comedian and writer Tony Hawks, Playing the Moldovans at Tennis, a novel about his hilarious adventures in Moldova, and it's really worth reading. Yeah, if we go to the basic facts on Moldova, you see here on the map, it's a small country just of the size of Belgium. It's situated between the rivers, mainly the rivers of Prut on the left side here in the map, and on the right side, the river of Dniester. And it's bordering to Romania on the left side, on the western part, and Ukraine on the eastern part. Yeah, and it has only access to the Baltic, to the Black Sea through a harbor here in the very south, which is not directly at the Black Sea, but it's at the river Danube. And it's called Giurgiulesti, and it's accessible for seagoing vessels. And it's at the confluence of the Danube and the river Prut. Moldova has about 3 million inhabitants, but it's very difficult to really find out clear figures about that. I think that's also a problem, that statistics is an issue. There are really not reliable figures available. And it's not really even clear how many Moldovians are really living in the country. And you can see also that's an enormous number of people who are living abroad. It's almost 45% of the population which is not living in the country. And actually many of them are also living in Russia. There are some estimates of about 50,000 people living, 500,000 people living in Russia. The language is Romanian, long time for the last decades classified as Moldavian, but in fact is a kind of northern dialect of Romanian. And language is also a political issue, since there's a minority of about 5% of Russians who still speak Russian. And in Transnistria, we will talk about that later, there are even about 30% of the population speaking Russian. The capital is Chisinau, has about 500,000 inhabitants. It used to be 650,000 in 1989. And I think that's also symptomatic for the entire country. There's a decreasing number of inhabitants. The GDP of Moldova is, I guess, the poorest in Europe. It's about 14 billion US dollars. And that means a per capita GDP of around 5,000 US dollars per year. And if you see in comparison what happens in Germany, we have 4,262 billion US dollars. And the per capita GDP is 10 times more than in Moldova. And industry and economy is depending mainly from agriculture. And you may know that wine industry is, let's say, the most important for export, at least in Moldova. Red wine is famous and extraordinary tasty, and wine cellars have partly about 200 kilometers space underground. About the history, Moldova was founded in the 1350s, founded by principals, by Orthodox religious princes who established pretty stable principality in that area. And in the good times, it had a considerably larger territory than today. The capital used to be Suceava and later Iași. Both are cities that are now in the northern part of Romania. The territory of Moldova and the power of the princes was always contested by the neighboring powers, Hungary, Poland, Lithuania, Tatars in the east, and later by the Ottomans. And under the Ottomans, Moldova became a vassalage, but could keep its Orthodox princely power, the only one in Europe, besides Wallachia. After the Russian-Turkey War, Russia annexed parts of Moldova and integrated it in the Russian Empire. Between the world wars, Moldova became part of Romania. And at the beginning of the Second World War, Russia and the Soviet Union again occupied parts of it, and then it was contested during heavy battles between the Germans and the Russians. The German Wehrmacht and the Romanian army occupied Moldova, and they deported and massacred about 300,000 Jewish people. In 1940, the Red Army started the Iași-Chișinău offensive, where the Red Army destroyed huge forces of the joint German-Romanian army. Far more than 100,000 soldiers died and hundreds of thousands became prisoners of war. For Hitler's army, a disaster similar to the Battle of Stalingrad. Interestingly, this is not so often known in Germany. Later became Moldova part of the Soviet Union, the Moldovan Socialist Republic. And after the political changes in Soviet Union, Moldova became in 1991 an independent Republic of Moldova. In 1992, Transnistria broke away. We will talk later about that, and I have an additional slide on that. And in 1994, we had the autonomy of the Gagauz territory. Gagauzia is an autonomous region in the meantime. It has about 120,000 people. It's a minority, Orthodox and Turkish speaking, but partly with a strong affinity to Russia. In 1991, Gagauz politicians declared their territory as an independent socialistic republic. The conflict escalated over months, but thankfully did not develop into a war. And in 1994, a compromise was reached and Gagauzia remained in Moldova as a region with far-reaching autonomy. But to this day, it remains a kind of gateway for political conflicts. We will also talk about that later. Yeah, and talking about Transnistria, it's a very small territory. You see that here, the yellow stripe on the right side. It's strip between the river Dniester and the Ukrainian border. During the Soviet Union times, there were huge Russian forces deployed, and they had about 40,000 tons of weapons there, a huge weapon stock, and only 20,000 tons of these weapons have been removed during the last decade. So there is still a huge stock for the Russian army available. And you can see the population, it's about 360,000 roundabout. I mean, that's are all estimates. They are also not very clear figures. And about a third are Russians, another third are Moldovans. There's also a strong Ukrainian minority. Yeah, and still there are Russian troops deployed. In 1991, it gave a breakaway from Moldova. Political forces supported that in that area, mainly supported by Russia. And then in spring 1992, it came even to a war between Moldova and Transnistria, let's say, and with up to 1,000 people killed. And then in July 1992, a ceasefire was taken. And up to now, it's a kind of frozen conflict, one of the biggest frozen conflicts in the world. Yeah, and internationally, Transnistria is an unrecognized breakaway state of Moldova. And officially and from the European Union side, it's still part of the Republic of Moldova. And up to now, there is always a danger of so-called false flag actions, alleged attacks against the Russian forces, for example, which could be used as to start military actions against Moldova or the Ukraine. So it's a very sensitive situation, and we have to discuss about it as well. So that's from my side here, and I will reshare now my screen, and I think we can start with our discussion. And I hope for all who don't know much about Moldova, I could create a kind of common ground for our discussion. And I'd like to start with the first question, and very general question to Mikhail. When Moldova pops up in German media, then we will read about a very tense and fragile situation, an unstable government, impressive manifestations of Russia-friendly people, and the latent but permanent danger of being involved in the war against Ukraine. Mikhail, does this reflect the reality? Is that your impression as well?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. Just let me know if you can hear me well,
Perfect.
because yeah, thank you very much. Well, I don't know. We just had an election yesterday, and that probably not the direct answer to a question, but something that will add to the context, right? Which is important right now.
What kind of election?
We had a governor elections. In Germany, I guess you call this position a minister president. It's actually the head of the Bundesländer. Yeah. So actually, Gagauzia is a autonomous territorial unit with a special legal status. The structure of power in Gagauzia has the governor. Gagauzia has the executive. The governor at the same time is the head of the executive, and there is a parliament as well. So yesterday there was a second round of elections, and there was elected a lady whom nobody knew just 1 month before the elections. The lady was nominated by a Shore party. Shore political party is a party led by a gentleman who is now hiding in Israel from Moldova's justice because of the implication and organizing a bank fraud in 2015 and 2014, I guess, when $1 billion was stolen from the Moldovan banking system. And Mr. Shore is right now hiding in Israel. He's an Israeli citizen, and there is a court decision on convicting Mr. Shore for 15 years of imprisonment as one of the organizers and beneficiaries of the bank fraud in the Republic of Moldova. So Shore has his own political party, which was created as an instrument to protect him from the criminal case. And Shore party entered elections in Gagauzia and won elections in Gagauzia with the candidate whom nobody knew just 1 month before. And Shore political party, there were actually lots of information and testimonies provided by the police. There was a massive electoral fraud and vote buying and so on. But actually, none of the candidates complained on vote buying, although they said they were saying actually there is a lot of vote buying. And Central Election Commission, local Central Election Commission, we have in the Republic of Moldova 2 Central Election Commissions. One is the national one on the national level, and one is in Combrad at the local level. The local Central Election Commission in Gagauzia is organizing elections of the governor and elections to the People's Assembly.
Yeah. And how can he manage to win the elections if nobody knows him or his party, or if he
his political party is well known in the Republic of Moldova. What I'm saying, he nominated a candidate whom nobody knew just 1 month before. So, and everybody actually knows Shore, including in Gagauzia, and actually people voted for the candidate of Ilan Shore. And Ilan Shore actually said, voting for this candidate, you are voting for me. So Ilan Shore is promoting his image as a Robin Hood, who steals the money but shares it with the people. So actually, this is the absurdity that we have in Gagauzia. And yes, in August of the last year, there were protests in Gagauzia, were announced the protests against the inflation, the increase of the prices for fuel and goods and so on and so forth. But all these protests actually were starting as a protest against inflation, but were ending up as a anti-governmental protest and pro-Putin and pro-Russia protest. And now, from today, after the result of the election, seeing who is supporting Ilan Shore's party in Gagauzia, we see that there were the same people that were organizing the protests actually back in August 2022, anti-governmental protests. So, from one side, yes, in Gagauzia, all these local politicians blame national government for supporting Ukraine diplomatically, of course, supporting Ukraine, and thus they say, you engage us in war. But at the same time, they constantly make pro-Putin statements, in their political rhetoric. Just 9 of May, it's one of the biggest days, it's a victory day in Russia, so-called Victory Day, and this is celebrated very much in Gagauzia as well.
Does this close relationship to Russia come from, and to Putin?
Well, the close relationship to Russia coming from the fact that Russia is very much influencing the public opinion in Gagauzia with unlimited access of Russian propaganda to the informational space of Gagauzia. So unfortunately, the government of the Republic of Moldova could not manage to cut the access of Russian propaganda to the territory of the Gagauz autonomy. And the Gagauz autonomy, the legitimacy of the local political leaders is coming from Putin and from Russia, actually. So they all claim that they love Russia, and actually everybody wants to show their actually close affiliation to different political figures in Russia. So, because Russia is influencing the public opinion, through its media. So Russia does not produce any specially tailored, for example, propaganda like Russia does for Western Europe, for example, for Germany or for France. Yeah. So for Russia, the Gagauz community and Russian-speaking community in the Republic of Moldova is a domestic audience. So they export to Russia, to the Russian-speaking audience in Republic of Moldova and in Ukraine, what they produce for domestic audience. So actually the same talk shows, same propaganda, same methods, and so on and so forth. And all the 30 years of Moldova's independence, the Russian-speaking community in the Republic of Moldova, and especially in Gagauzia, had an impression that they live in Russia, right? Yeah. Because they were watching the Russian television. So actually, during the Soviet Union, they were watching the Soviet television, Soviet Union propaganda. And when Soviet Union collapsed, they continued to watch Russian propaganda, right?
I mean, we will come back in more detail later to Gagauzia again.
Yes.
And would you say, is there also on the national level such an important influence on Russia?
Well,
or is that overestimated in the West?
Yes, you mentioned the national minorities. Yeah, so yes, it's very important. It's so important that actually in Moldova, the biggest national minority community is Ukrainian. So actually Ukrainians in the Republic of Moldova are up to 12%. And strange enough, but Ukrainians in the Republic of Moldova are solidar with Putin's aggression, not with Ukraine. So in majority, yeah. So all the national minorities in the Republic of Moldova are united in a so-called the Russian-speaking community, right? So we have the biggest national minority community is Ukrainians. Then you have Russians. Ukrainians about 12%. Russians about 8 or 10%. Then you have Gagauz 4 or 5%. Then you have Bulgarians 1.5 or 2%, and then you have Roma. So all these national minorities actually are united, are called also Russian speakers because they actually belong to the Russian speaking minority. Most of them, like Gagauz, for example, and Bulgarians, and majority of Ukrainians don't speak Romanian language, for example. Yeah. Neither Russians speak Romanian language. So actually, and yes, because speaking Russian language, they consume the content in Russian language. So primarily they consume, and all these 30 years they were consuming the content produced by Russian propaganda, and that's why Russian propaganda is very much influential. Russian propaganda is influential and has an influence not only on the Russian-speaking community. Among the Romanian speakers is also influential. So because of the part of the Romanian speakers are also oriented towards Russia and also watch the Russian propaganda. So yes, Russian propaganda is very much influential, and there were some attempts made in order to cut the access of Russian propaganda to the informational space of the Republic of Moldova, but it was more, let's say, serious steps were taken after the 22nd of February 2020, 24th of February 2022. I mean, when the full-scale aggression started last year. But there are some regions like Gagauzia, for example, and especially Gagauzia, where government did not manage to cut it for all. Yeah, so it's still, but it's only television. But you have social media, where the Russian propaganda is social media is present, and nobody is blocking Russian, let's say, channels and Russian websites on the territory of Republic of Moldova, except few websites, yeah, so that were blocked just recently. But yes, so
one last question for the moment. At least some weeks or months ago, the Ukrainian government published reports saying that they immediately expect false flag activities of Russia, and that an armed conflict could develop there as well. Fortunately, this didn't happen yet, but how real is that danger?
Well, it was a real danger, actually. They were trying to organize a coup d'etat. So actually, in Chisinau, that's why it was one of the reasons of the protest organized by Shore Party during the winter. And in Gagauz, the protest started in August and continued till September. But in Chisinau, they were actually continuing all winter. And one of the main rhetorics was actually the high prices and energy crisis. And they were blaming the government, why government does not go to Putin and ask for him are asked from Putin a cheap gas or something like that. And yes, the information which came from Ukraine was related to the protest, and there was some information that actually the organizers of the protest also want to organize a coup d'etat in the Republic of Moldova. So that's it.
Yeah. So I would like to switch to Eckhart. Moldova is very close to the front line of the war against Ukraine. How stable do you see from a European perspective the political situation in Moldova?
Well, first of all, Moldova at the moment has a pro-European government and a pro-European president. This is something and does not happen all over the region. This is very good. And the question is, how much can we make use of that? We, the European Union, because as Michael just said, the situation is fragile. And I think a lot depends on the visibility of advantages of being close to the European Union. And I would say Moldova has been discovered lately by the European Union. For a long time, it did not play an important role. And now this does, of course, this has to do with the war, and this has to do with the fact that the Moldovan government, Moldovan president was smart enough to jump on the bandwagon of a candidacy for EU membership in connection with Ukraine. This was very important. And because until 2022, so until last year, Moldova did not have a membership perspective. They were they officially still are, of the so-called Eastern Partnership, which is the Eastern branch of the European neighborhood policy. And this policy means let's have close contacts, but no membership. As a former president of the Commission put it, Romano Prodi, everything but institutions. So, and this has changed now. And
does that mean that we now have to count with a new EU member Moldova within the next few years?
No, this is the problem, because it's a long way to Europe. And it's not like a sports club, where you sign a membership form and then next first of months you are in it. Because the membership in the European Union requires that the candidate accepts and implements all rules of the European Union, which is the so-called acquis communautaire. And this is a long way to go. Just to give you an example, take Montenegro. Montenegro is a small, nice country with some problems, including corruption, but nonetheless, it's completely harmless. And they even have already the euro as currency, even if this was not on the basis of an agreement with the European Central Bank. With Montenegro, this nice little sunshine country, 750,000 inhabitants, the EU has been negotiating for 11 years now, 11 years. And now this means that from the beginning of the negotiations, and they have not begun by the moment till the end, and the ratification of the agreement, of the membership agreement, this would at least take 10 years. The problem is that people might have the illusion that in the very soon future, Moldova could become EU member. And if this will not happen, then the Russian propaganda will use that, of course, and say, haha, see the West, and they promise, but they don't deliver. But it's a long way to go. The same for Ukraine, by the way.
But if there are so many uncertainties, what are the reasons for the EU to go for a further integration of Moldova?
The reasons are the same, which the EU always had for enlargement, and this is produce stability. I mean, there was the phrase coined by our former former foreign minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher, all the people still will remember him. He said, either we export stability or we import instability. So that's the reason. So the enlargement always has been a political project, and this is what it means. So the idea is to stabilize the region by taking them into the family. Is the same with Ukraine and potentially also Georgia and the Western Balkans. Always the same idea.
And what would you say are the concrete benefits for Moldova?
Well, the benefits for Moldova are, of course, that they are part of a community of values, that they are part of a very important single market, that they are beneficiaries of many European programs. The problem is that as we did enlargement in the past, it was a long way to go, and only at the very end you got the rewards. And this takes a long time. What the EU now changes is to integrate Moldova already in some projects, to give some money for improvement of the situation, so that it does not mean you have to wait for 10 years and to suffer for 10 years, because reforms always also produce, of course, losers. And then finally, you get the reward of membership. But step by step, in the same speed they deliver reforms and progress, they also get something for it. And this is the idea. And so hopefully the European Union can convince the people in Moldova that it's worthwhile to go to undergo this process.
Mm. And if there is a closer integration of Moldova, is there also in political or even military terms a kind of red line signaling to Moscow that you must not attack Moldova?
Well, by now the EU is not the main producer of security in Europe. As we know, this is NATO, and Moldova by now has in the constitution the neutrality. So by now it's impossible for Moldova to join NATO, beside the fact that NATO is probably not very eager to get Moldova as a member. The EU is more a economic and civil project, but of course, being member of the European Union gives you some security, and for sure people have that in mind. Look at the Baltic states. I mean, they are integrated in every format in the European Union, because they say the more we are integrated, the better it is for our security. And I think that's the same idea with Moldova.
Thanks for the moment. And I would like to integrate now Julian. A week ago, you posted some nice photos on Facebook on a biking tour along the river Prut and Dniester, together with your family and your friends. And I think most people in Germany wouldn't expect that kind of smooth leisure activity there, because of our perception is always framed by very limited media coverage of political or military issues. So how is daily life in Moldova?
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. And also thanking for bringing up the first question you asked. So how is it in reality? So is it really that we are just the next victim of the Kremlin, or is there also normal life going on? And I think here, I know how media works. Yeah, they want clicks and they want to have headlines that people can relate to. So, okay, I understand that. And also you have to understand, or I understand how the Moldovan government works. I mean, they have to produce a certain insecurity, which is also real, to get further support, yeah, and the tendency. I'm not sure, is my connection stable enough? Can you hear me well?
The picture is like flattery, but the voice perfect.
Okay, good. Yes, sorry.
No, it's everything fine. Go ahead.
Electricity problems here in Tbilisi. Yeah. So media produce a certain picture. Our government produces a certain picture, And I think so. I can retell. I also last year there were maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the full-scale invasion by the Russian troops in Ukraine. We were totally not sure. So the last week of February and the first week of March, that was everything was possible for the citizens, and there was a big fear that we will be the next. And Odessa is kind of the prediction line that is clear to the Moldovans. They don't have any illusions that Moldova can protect itself militarily. This is not so. If Odessa falls, Moldova will fall, and there's the people are clear about that. We didn't need Lavrov's statement in December that of course Moldova is number 2. So, and beside all the hybrid war and we see Moldova in the headlines only in times of instability and threats and war. There's a very normal life going on. So maybe except of the period of February, March, and April, where we had kind of up to 300,000 refugees from Ukraine on top of, as you said, roughly 3 million, so 10% plus in the country. But then that already decreased and end of April, and then in summer times there was already normal life going on. So
By the way, how can Moldova cope with that huge amount or huge number of refugees?
That's I know that's hard to imagine for Germans, because we think we have to provide them everything, and sure, refugees want a big hall with 20 I don't know, with a lot of refugees in one building. No, what refugees want and need is a warm soup on a table that looks like a home, and that's what Moldovans did. So they opened the house. 90% of all the refugees were hosted by families, and we have a half-empty country, as you also mentioned in your presentation, that the number of citizens is decreasing in Moldova. So we had specialists or refugee specialists from Johannita or Red Cross International that came from Africa, or that they were the specialists. Were Europeans, but they were taken from Kenya, for example, and brought to Moldova in March, and they were thinking, we are expert now on building up refugee camps, but that's possibly not what you need. So they were kind of puzzled, and they didn't really know how to help. How international help was really appreciated and needed was money. The people that opened their houses after 2 weeks, found out that the gas bill was high, the water bill was high, and food was expensive. So and they need furniture. So that was a crisis situation. What Moldova managed, I think they can be. We all can be very proud of Moldova and of what they did in the springtime. And as I said, after starting with summer, we have a side of this crisis and hybrid wars. We have normal life going on, and Moldovans are quite resilient to crisis. They say, well, we have seen crisis since 91 latest, and they are quite used to unstable.
You are the president of the biggest. You are the president of the biggest environmental NGO in Moldova. What are your main topics there, and how would you describe the relevance of civil society organizations in a country which has, let's say, a pretty different political system than here?
Well, civil society jumped in when help was needed. Also in springtime, there was not the big international donors or NGOs that took over. There was the small ones. And as you said, now we are the biggest environmental. That sounds big. We are 20 people, 20 employees in Ecovisio. And we started of a network of people in Moldova, young people that saw their future in Moldova, which is not automatically the case. Many people see their future in Western Europe or US or Canada or and not in Moldova necessarily. But here we build a network of people that say, okay, no, maybe there's a chance, and maybe there's a chance even to become a model region on some kinds of sustainable developments. When we see about agricultural products, when we look at energy production and consumption, when we look like also and biking, there's a lot not done yet in Moldova. So that's I think for many young people that lived in the West due to Erasmus programs or whatever, that brought that or took that chance in the West and then came home and say, hey, actually in the West they're trying things out that are more realistically to be implemented in Moldova. Yeah. So we have 30% more solar radiation than Germany has in average. So solar energy will become a big topic. Plus, we are an agricultural country, so biomass and biogas will hopefully help us for decarbonization. And within Ecovisio, we go with the flow. So we see what topics are on now. So when we started in 2013, for example, I had also bike infrastructure, vegetarianism, and that was not the case yet then in 2013. And vegetarian, for example, or less food, that became a topic. We have now also a vegan scene in Moldova, and biking became, for example, first time in 2020 with the pandemic that people felt more safer on a bike than in a packed trolleybus.
That all sounds very good. And if you talked about solar energy, I think actually Moldova is still very dependent from a power station which is situated in Transnistria, so more or less under Russian influence. How can the country overcome that situation?
Yeah, that was the big question starting already in October 21. So before the full-scale invasion, energy crisis started, where we felt, okay, something is in preparation. We now know for what, but Gazprom made it harder, or raised the prices, and and I know Germany was scared that they are energetically maybe 20% independent by Russia, 25, and here in Moldova we were 95. We had only some biomass, so we had some wood, which is basically the forest, which is not really existent, is the alternative to gas. So, and that was, I think, a huge, huge success of the nowadays Moldovan government, that they succeeded quite well. So there were some scenarios last November. I remember where we said, well, if the gas price raises, then the protests and the Shore party might have some successes. And this is there was a real or scary. There were some scary scenarios on the horizon. And how the government did it, so fortunately the long-planned pipeline from Romania to Chisinau was done, finished, and so we have now gas also from the European market, which is expensive. We're still used to not pay world market prices.
Yeah, I would like to give this question also to Eckhard. How can the European Union support the energy sector in Moldova?
Well, the European Union already supports the energy sector by financial support and by know-how support, and also by supporting the infrastructure for energy delivery. So it's very clear that this is a very vulnerable point for Moldova, and that this could change the attitude of the people very quickly. If the kitchen is cold, to put it that bluntly, then people probably lose their good mood. So the EU is aware of that, and there was just a meeting the other day. It's a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, 7th of February, where the Association Council of the European Union and of the Republic of Moldova met, and they came up with a couple of concrete program points to support the country, because Moldova and the EU have a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. This is what it's called. So it's more than just free trade of commodities. And this became fully effective in 2016. And on the basis of that, there is this association council. So what I can see and what I can say is that the EU is pretty much aware of the situation and really tries to support the country to get out of this enormous dependency.
Yeah, thanks. I would also like now to introduce again or to include again Michael. So we learned a lot about the EU-Moldovan relation and integration. What are your expectations as a Moldavian citizen and also maybe as a member of a minority in Moldova? What are your expectations to the EU?
Well, my expectation to the EU is that EU speeds up a little bit the integration process. So I don't have that the EU has a luxury or looks to keep the countries on the borders with the EU, you know, like guys, stay there before actually you are ready, and then we will engage you. So for the EU integration of the Western Balkans, for example, took too long. They kept it too long, and now this country is actually struggling with influence of Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, of China, of Russia, for example, yes. So in this part of the world, our main donor of security right now is Ukraine, of course. Ukraine resists. Moldova will continue to exist as an independent state. But if there will not be a clear perspective from the European Union, and Ukraine will not be engaged or integrated, and Moldova will not be integrated. But if Ukraine is integrated, then the question of Moldova is decided automatically. Yeah, it's both ways. Whether Ukraine is invaded by Russia, so Moldova will disappear as an independent state, or the other way around. If Ukraine resists, which is more likely right now, and actually Ukraine resisted and will continue to exist as an independent state, so Moldova will continue to exist as an independent state. But that should be speed up the integration process, actually. So if you will leave these two countries, then actually it opens the room for countries like, again, Russia, China, and so on. So I think...
I mean, I remember when our students in 2008 or 2009 produced films on the EU-Moldova relationship, I think the situation didn't change during the last 10, 15 years at that time. Do you see now, let's say, during the last 1-2 years, something changing? Is that speeding up?
Well, I think, yes, at least we have the government. Well, honestly, we're very lucky, not only us, but Ukraine, the European Union is very lucky that we have this government, because I cannot imagine what would happen if Igor Dodon and Socialist Party will remain in power. Definitely, if socialists will remain in power, then the Republic of Moldova would be definitely used against Ukraine in a certain way. So I'm not sure to the scale or to the extent Belarus is right now is used, but definitely Moldova will be used at least on a diplomatic level against the Ukraine. So actually, the election of Maya Sandu and the pro-European PAS government was just on time. So Maya Sandu was elected in 2020, and the PAS party was elected in 2021. But of course, as every government, it has a, it's eroding. Actually, the popularity of every government is going down. And the biggest problem for the Republic of Moldova is right now is that there is no other political party that actually has high ratings in the polls, right? That can take over the power, except PAS, that can take over the EU integration process and move it further. So the PAS is the only party today which passes to the parliament in next elections that can do it. And the alternative is the Socialist Party and Shore Party, which are strongly anti-EU and strongly pro-Russia. Actually, not pro-Russia, they are puppets of Russia. So they are representing the Russian interests in the Republic of Moldova. So that's why, yes, I agree that the situation is very much fragile, and that's the biggest problem that now EU is facing in the Republic of Moldova. That's actually the only pass among the political parties that will pass into the parliament if next Sunday we will have elections. They're the only party that can actually move the EU integration process. And this is the big problem for the Republic of Moldova right now.
I mean, if you talk about European integration, the vast majority of the Moldovans speak Romanian. Many of them have an Romanian, that means an EU passport. So is there anything like a kind of connecting with Romania again, or connecting anyhow with Romania? Is that on the political agenda in the moment?
Look, there are two things. Well, first of all, yes, even in my region, which is strongly pro-Russian, half of the population is already in Germany. Yeah, since 2014, when these sanctions were imposed on Russia because of Crimea, the economic situation in Russia started to worsen, right? And many gastarbeiters in Russia, those who did not settle up yet or did not have their business, the vast majority of gastarbeiters, they were just, seasoned workers that were going back and forth, making some money and coming back. Those reoriented to Europe and mainly to Germany. Yeah. So my village, for example, half of my village is in Pirmasens, for example. Yeah, it's actually, yeah, and many villages, and actually Gagos community is having access to the European labor market, not based on the Romanian citizenship, but based on the Bulgarian citizenship, because Bulgarians provide citizenship to the Gagos community because they consider Gagos community as historic Bulgarians speaking Turkish language. Yes, so they're already here from that point of view. And the second question was, I forgot. Sorry, Christopher.
I mean, if that is on the agenda to, let's say, to kind of unify with Romania.
Yes, that's a very good question. The EU integration perspective takes out the question of unification. So unification question is very much the question which is right now is dividing Republic of Moldova. So there are two questions. So actually there is one question which is dividing Moldovan society today and right now. It's a attitude towards Russia. Half of the society or part of the society considers Putin as a liberator, yeah, and half of the society, or the biggest part of the society right now, because of the full-scale invasion, is perceiving Putin as an invader, as an enemy, right? So and Russia is actually using this divide, and one of the biggest, let's say, how do you call it, legends or myths which Russia is using is actually to divide Republic of Moldova, is that actually Republic of Moldova and this pro-European government will unify Republic of Moldova with Romania. So EU integration process takes out this myth from the agenda, because integration into the EU provides possibility to Moldova to remain as an independent and sovereign state, and at the same time provides possibility to Romanian people on the both sides of the Dniester River to reunify, like I don't know, Austrians in Austria and South Tyrol, something like that. Without unifying two countries, actually both nations, one nation actually divided between the Moldova and Romania will get unified. But at the same time, Republic of Moldova will keep its independence and sovereignty. So
I would like to ask Eckhard, what is the stance of the European Union to that? Would they insist that they will stay an independent Moldavian state?
Well, this is not an EU matter. I mean, this is the decision of the people. But I don't see any tendencies from the EU side, to make them merge. Not at all. So the Republic of Moldova is an independent state. It's accepted as such. It's nominated to be candidate of the EU membership as such. And this is it. So the EU has no stakes in that. And talking about the Romanian passport, if I may add that, this makes, of course, the integration process easier, because one of the reluctances of the present EU members according enlargement is always, oh, if we take them, then we have a lot of migration to our countries. And this is, of course, not the case with Moldova. And this is for two reasons. First of all, it's a small country anyway. But second, those who want to come and who wanted to come, they're already here, as Michael mentioned, you know. So there is no fear that once Moldova becomes a member, there is many people now coming into the other EU countries. Not at all. So this makes it easier. And of course, the pressure through the war makes it easier. So you could say Vladimir Putin makes Moldova an EU member. This will be the result of it.
Yeah. Before we open the discussion for all attendees, I would pose another question to you, Eckhard. How do you see the frozen conflict of Transnistria? Is that very close to a hot conflict?
Michael and Julian, who are on the spot, can assess that much better. What I would like to say, normally the English terms are always better than the German terms. You know, this is why even if we speak German, we always use the English terms. In the respect of the conflicts, I think the German term, which is schwelender Konflikt, so a simmering conflict, is the better word than frozen conflict. We see that in Nagorno-Karabakh, and this is also here the case. So this conflict is simmering. From what I see and what I hear, but the two colleagues from Moldova can comment on that much more in detail. There is no intention from the Transnistrian side to fan this conflict, because from what I hear, also the Transnistrian elite is not interested in Russia taking over the country, because this would mean, of course, that they lose their economic benefits for parts of the Russian elite. And so in this respect, I do not foresee, but once again, as an outsider and a newspaper reader, I do not foresee this conflict turning into a hot conflict in the foreseeable future, unless Russia really, and this has, as already was mentioned, to do with Odessa, unless Russia really says we now use this instrument to produce massive instability.
Yeah, I would like to give the question to Julian. You are an insider. What role does the Transnistrian conflict play in Moldova, and how do you experience that? Are you still there? At least the picture is dark.
Already enjoying Georgian wine.
Yeah, no, I think he has an electricity problem, I guess. But perhaps, Michael, you can answer to that question.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. Yes, so I agree with. Yes, I agree with Mr. Straten-Schulte. Yes, actually, this is. I don't see any potential for this conflict to become in a hot phase. It's non-comparable with the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. So actually, the biggest, how to say, the list. So there is a economic elite which is benefiting from this gray zone, and this is the least. They are least wanting the invasion of Transnistria by invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and becoming Transnistria actually part of Russia. So now it's invaded by Russians. Yeah, Transnistria is a part of the territory of the Republic of Moldova, which is invaded by Russians. But again, the economic things are decided by the local economic elite. So they definitely don't want anything like that to happen. They just simply want to keep this gray zone. And they are unsatisfied because Putin with this war actually moved a little bit, not a moved this gigantic tectonic, this massive actually, and forced the world to look for solution when it comes to Transnistria and Ukraine as well. And now actually they have to find some solutions there. And I would say that actually the local economic elites are caring mostly about keeping in safe their businesses. So leaders of Transnistria, as far as I know, have Ukrainian citizenship, even have some business in Ukraine, and actually they are controlling only the economic side. But there is also Russian KGB, FSB, and Russian militaries. Yeah, that actually controlling. This is the second force which is controlling the Transnistria as well, and they will not give so far this provide possibility for reintegration of Transnistria into the Republic of Moldova.
I mean, I think that was a very important information. Yeah, Eckhard, immediately. I think perception here by German media is completely different. You have really a feeling that's really very delicate and sensitive situation there in Transnistria.
Well, if I may add,
this might be ignited every moment.
Eckhard, if I may add something, yes, very, very important. When the full-scale invasion started, everybody expected in the Republic of Moldova that Transnistria will create problems for the Republic of Moldova. But as we see, Transnistria is staying calm and actually avoiding creating any problems in this condition, because they're afraid that actually they know that Ukraine, if something Ukraine will not like, or if they will provoke Ukraine can smash them, you know. And that's why they sit calmly there, just, you know, to not provoke anybody and to keep this gray zone running and bringing some money. The most loud, starting from the full-scale invasion in Republic of Moldova, was Gagauzia, yeah? And that was the biggest surprise, that Gagauzia actually was very much loud. And here is the explanation, because Gagauzia is protected by the Moldovan law, and they use this, you know, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of association, yeah? Transnistria, when it bet or on the Russian military force, now they understand that it was a big mistake. Russian military force does not protect them. Russian military force which is present in Transnistria, this forces and militaries of Russia present in Transnistria, they don't protect. They actually create them additional problems, you know. So that's why actually they try to stay calm, not to provoke anybody. The most one is who is provoking is Gagauzia right now, and Gagauzia is used by Russia against Republic of Moldova using the legal instruments and legal framework of Republic of Moldova.
Yeah, I see. Very interesting. Eckhard, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to mention Transnistria is often compared to East Germany in the old times, you know. But as a matter of fact, the everyday life seems to be relatively easy. So there's a back and forth. You can go easily from Chisinau to Stepanakert, and Stepanakert, not
Tiraspol.
Tiraspol. Yeah, I just returned yesterday from Armenia, and this is my comparison, by the way, because the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is really a hot conflict, and there are shootings every day. Maybe there will be a solution now. You know, EU is trying to moderate something, but compared to that, you know, it's relatively easy. You know, I take a car and I go from Chisinau to Tiraspol, and I go shopping there, and I go back, and the people from Tiraspol, they come to the rest of Moldova, and they work there or they shop there, and they go back and forth. So this is relatively relaxed. And in this respect, it's not comparable neither to Abkhazia and Georgia, nor to Nagorno-Karabakh.
Yeah, good to know. Julian, have you ever been in Transnistria, and can you do that currently?
Yeah. Very easy, like Eckhard told you. I heard, so the best version of explaining why this conflict exists was for me by Wazu Nantoy, a historian, Moldovan. He said, well, Julian, this conflict exists because of 500 men, only men that have business interests in this. And this
Sheriffs.
Well, not only, I mean, but these 500 men are sitting in Tiraspol, Moscow, Chisinau, but also Frankfurt, New York, and London. So
and
many
Kiev.
different.
And Kiev. And Kiev.
Kiev, as well. Yeah. So this is it's not ethnic, it's not religious, it's not about language. Yeah, it's about money. So, and this is what we see now in times of war. Well, these guys care for money and not so much for hot things, like we have in Nagorno-Karabakh or here Abkhazia, where people are really, there are deeper roots of this conflict. That's why I also think, and yes, to your question, I've been there, before the pandemic regularly. Honestly speaking, during Corona, it was a little more difficult to get there. And I didn't feel like going there now in times of war, but it's totally possible and totally easy.
Yeah, cool. I think that's really an important lesson we learned today. So I would like to use the chance to open the floor now for your questions, dear audience, or your comments. Who want to say something? Just raise your hand and open your microphone. Who will start? Everybody is impressed by our panelists. There's a question from Helena. Please.
Hi, can you just tell me if you can see me on the camera?
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you.
Excellent, thank you so much. My name is Helena Tuchel. I work as a policy advisor in the Bundestag, in the German Parliament, and I have two questions for our guests from Moldova. First of all, what are your opinions on the European political community that has been debated since almost a year now, by some as an alternative setup to the EU membership, by some as a setup which could work until Moldova becomes a full EU member? And the second question is, if you can maybe give some concrete examples of pro-Western, let's say, actors or civil society, political actors, business actors in Transnistria or in Gagauzia. I was listening to a podcast recently, and there were mentioned some very interesting numbers about potentially up to 1/3 of the population in Gagauzia being pro-Western. We don't, of course, know the numbers for sure. So if you can give us some example of who these actors might be for the Western political or civil society community to reach out to. Thank you very much for the interesting debate.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think the question was directed to Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'm not sure about 1/3. You can see it from the results of elections. Last elections were parliamentary and presidential elections, especially presidential elections. Last presidential elections we had were in November, December 2022, and only 5% of Gagauz electorate voted for Maya Sandu. And the turnout was very high.
Maya Sandu is the president.
Maya Sandu is the president, pro-European president. Yes,
yeah.
Right. Thank you, Christoph. So, pro-European, 1/3, those who definitely like European money. Yeah, but when it comes to European values, there is a big question. Values of freedom, values of, let's say, human rights, and so on and so forth. And this full-scale war in Ukraine, it's like a lakmus paper. It's an indicator. It's a very big indicator. It actually naked everybody and showed everybody who he is or who she is actually. When it comes to, if you say actually, well, in Ukraine nothing is so certain, when it means that actually the person actually not really stands with the values of humanity. And there are very few persons actually that declared, look, I mean, this is an invasion. This is actually the criminal act against humanity, against the sovereign state. Very few persons in Gagauzia did that. actually. And from that point of view, you can see actually that not too many. Again, Russian propaganda and some Russian schemes and corrupting of the local political elite by Russia within the last maybe 15 or 20 years.
That sounds that you are a kind of minority in the minority. How do you cope with that? Is there any harassment of you, for example, or of your let's say political NGO?
Well, on the internet, of course, on social media, definitely. So far, we don't feel any physical threat for us. But yes, you're right. We're in a minority. There are constantly actually attacks on me personally because I'm the most vocal in my media, actually, which stands actually declared the position regarding the war in Ukraine from the very beginning. We solidarized with Ukraine, and of course, I have the streams, the live streams on YouTube and Facebook every Friday evening and commenting the situation, political situation in Gagauzia and the Republic of Moldova, and of course, with lots of criticism towards the pro-Russian politicians that actually are looking for some declaring that Russia we have to develop strategic partnership with Russia. I mean, which is nonsense. I mean, it's a crazy thing to do that. I mean, how can you develop the strategic partnership with Russia being between European Union and Ukraine, which is in war with Russia? I mean, which is crazy thing. But actually, there are some people. Why they say it? Because they know people watch Russian television and people actually live in the Russian propaganda, and they actually. And they are bribed by the politicians. And actually, our open position makes us actually as a how do you call it the goal or object for attack from the local politicians, Russian politicians, and even from the regional public broadcaster. When it comes to the European political community, yes, we have the meeting of the European political community in June of this year. 50 or how many there are members of the states are coming to Moldova, and it's a big event actually, and we're preparing for that. So, but I don't think that people are waiting to become just the members of the European political community. So actually, people are waiting to become the members of the European Union. And I will repeat this, what I said during discussions of today. I don't think that the European Union have a lux to keep Moldova and Ukraine on the outskirts of the European Union. If it will continue like that, Moldova and Ukraine and other countries will be cut by two pieces by Russia, by other bigger players actually, and it will create. And if it will happen, then it's actually European Union will prepare the platform to go and to destroy European Union by the Russians. And actually, you already did it with the propaganda and bribing the left-wing radicals and right-wing radicals, which are supported and endorsed by Russians, actually, by Putin and so on. So I don't think that European Union has a lux to keep Moldova and the European Union and the Ukraine on outskirts of the European Union. I mean, there is time to take some decisions, on the integration, to integrate these countries. Which are the decisions? I don't know, but I think that it's time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Are there further questions? Yes, from Dan Bear. Actually, I have to say, Dan is a good friend of mine, and I traveled with him through Bulgaria and Serbia, and he's from America, from Chicago with us. Welcome, Dan. You have to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, and good to speak with you again, Christoph. It's been a long time, and in fact, I just returned from Germany on Saturday from Munich, the Transport and Logistics Messe. So the question that I have is endemic, or part of it, it's very important, is for economic stability, is the integration of transport to from the European Union. And what is everybody's sense of where that might be right now with respect to rail and truck connections? And let me add this, in addition, are there any, is there anything in place to expedite commerce? For example, are there concessions made for customs? to facilitate traffic to and from Moldova.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
So, mhm.
Eckhard, you raised already your hand, and perhaps it's also a good question for you.
Yeah, there is a discussion about that. I just tried to find the passages very quickly, which I did not. But yes, the EU wants to support Moldova in improving the connectivity of the country. This is, of course, very important. So it's in the papers and in the opinion of the European Commission. This is this paper is called Opinion, and there will be an update. Yes, so it's on it is on the agenda because we have learned in the European Union how important connectivity is. And second, I would like just to come back to the European political community. I think in itself, it's important that they have their next meeting, as Michael said, in June in Moldova, which means that, I don't know, 45 or something like that, heads of states and government, or maybe deputy heads of states and government travel to Moldova and put that on the map also in the media of the respective countries. I think it's also not foreseen as a replacement for EU membership. There were attempts in the late 90s, if I recall that correctly, and there was an attempt with the European neighborhood policy. But the European political community is just a guerrilla party. This is just where they meet and talk and have a lot of bilateral talks. So this is no organization. This doesn't have a secretariat. It doesn't have a budget or whatsoever. It's just really like a big party where you can say people can meet, people can talk. So the Armenian guy can talk to the Azerbaijani guy, the Kosovo guy can talk to the Serbian guy without very official protocol. And this is the idea of this European political community. So it's not a replacement for membership, but it might be a good opportunity to resolve some problems or discuss them informally. And if this happens, then everything will be fine with it. But it's not a competing organization for the European Union or EU membership.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that clarification. Yeah, any further questions?
Maybe I can also specify maybe two more answers to Dan, because that's really a topic in Moldova, and that's really a problem, the connectivity. Yeah, we have, for example, we have the Soviet track width of the rails, which departs us from Romania, and yeah, we just found out that this is a big topic when we try to export the wheat from Odessa, yeah, and that would have helped if there was already some ideas how to get this on track, and maybe to harmonize this with the European track width, at least from Chisinau to Iași and on Chisinau Bucharest. So we have Soviet track width, which is a 9 centimeters plus, and we have it only to Galați and to Unghien, and then with the tracks have to change. And
so in other words, there's no connectivity. So let's put it this way. Yeah. So there are only two bridges, one in the south and one in the center, connecting Moldova with Romania. So that's it.
Yeah, perhaps you should connect with Dan. He is really a trained specialist.
Yes, in fact, that's I have my doctorate in that, so it's a topic I know a little bit about. Actually, there are ways to do this from what we call 1520 land, which is 1520 millimeters is the track width, and I've actually looked into that to convert to standard gauge, but not getting rid of the 1520 millimeter. Can everybody hear me, by the way? I can't.
Yeah,
I can't really determine. But anyway, so as regards that, there are ways to do that. There are technical ways to do that, and I looked into that because I'd done some work in 2013, 14, perhaps even 15 when I was in Moldova and looked into that, and also establishing a locomotive repair facility with export of parts from Moldova to European Union and to the United States. So there are ways to do that, but I'm just curious as to the political will, the political will, and how much support one would get so that one could get that financed. So that's a very important question.
Yeah, thanks again.
Yeah.
And yeah, are there further questions? You're welcome with some. You have the possibility to ask everything you want to know. Nobody. So then I would pose a question to Julian again. We are coming also quite to the end. Julian, as a German, you are still as German. What do you expect from Germany, or what can we do? Perhaps even personally as individuals, what can we do to support Moldova?
Yeah, I mean, being curious about the regions, visiting it, it's not that far. There's a night train, Vienna, Bucharest, and another night train. It's called the Train of Friendship, Bucharest, Chisinau. So you can even come on an ecological way, because I mean, European membership is great, yeah, and people are waiting for it. And but what Europe should be about is not only connectivity tracks and motorways, but also people. And we see now what is also in Ukraine, but more even for Moldova, we don't have so many people that know about that country. And that's why Christoph, I'm thankful that you do this evening, and I hope many people see that and get curious about it. And really, you have a Turkish-speaking minority called Gagauz something. There's Transnistria, which is weird, but you can just visit it. And so you have a little Europe in a nutshell, in a small country of wonderful food. And yeah, and I would love to see more journalists that take more than one day before writing an article, and not only or that even travel. Yeah, sometimes I think the journalists take other articles and make their own articles, and just copying that. That's the almost falling apart country, and I mean, this is then repeating Kremlin propaganda, because what is Kremlin propaganda is about is creating instability and not letting Moldova and Ukraine become a model or a successful or a good practice, or something that succeeds, because I think that's what the Kremlin fears, because Putin fears for his power. And when Russian citizens see, hey, a few years ago, Ukraine and Moldova really courageously voted democratically for a European path, and now they are better off. That's something what the Kremlin has to fear, and that's why we have this war. And that's why if now Western journalists write about it, that it's so unstable and you should never go there and never invest, well, then that's just repeating the propaganda. So being curious, getting to know more, and establish connectivity on civil societies.
Yeah, at the beginning you mentioned that there's also a good opportunity to travel by bike in Moldova. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, there we are in a very pioneer phase. So you have to really love it. No, I cannot say that this, and it will also never become a touristic hotspot. Yeah, and also on biking, this will never become the biking hotspot. I mean, we now created last year. We started to make the like we have on Elbe or Donau, the Radwanderweg, the Velo Nistru along the Nistru trail. The idea is to mark it in the future also on the Transnistrian side, so that you can from Rezina and to Kriolend to cross the two bridges and have a circle road along the Nistru. But this is something for a niche of people, and with biking we're really in the pioneer phase yet. So.
Yeah, okay, we have some two bike activists from our association here with us. So I think they heard something about Moldova, and perhaps they are motivated to cooperate with you. Yeah. Are there any further questions? I think it would be the last chance for to drop a question. If not, then I would say a really big thank to all.
There's one, Johanna.
Johanna. Oh, sorry. Overlooked.
I'm sorry, I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
very good.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So firstly, thank you very much. It was very interesting, the discussion. And you mentioned before that there's a huge language diversity in Moldova. And I'm just curious, how is this language diversity integrated in the school system? Like, can everybody speak their language they learn with their parents in school, or how does that look like?
Very good question. Should I answer just quickly? Yeah. Because I'm just getting my older son into school. And Johanna, I would love if the school system would reflect the reality, because we are living in a bilingual country. Yeah, so we have everybody, mostly everybody speaks Romanian, except of Gagauz and some in Transnistria, and some elder people in some outskirts of Balz and Chisinau. But Romanian is the most spoken language, and this is also the taught language. And from my point of view, Russian should be the second tier taught, because you hear it on the streets. But there's there you need some courageous education minister to put this as a second language. So unfortunately, I would say second language or third language is French, and then German, which is you don't find good teachers. So almost any Moldovan had a few years French in school and doesn't really speak French. So I would rather see to this, exactly how you say, this language diversity which we have. Romanian, Russian, and then Gagauz, which is I would say maybe a Turkish influence, or a Turk language. To be that reflected would be wonderful. We're not there yet in celebrating this diversity in the schools.
Thank you. Does anybody want to add something, Michael or Eckhart?
Yes, I would. I support what Julian says. Actually, I also have two kids that go to school, and unfortunately, this linguistic diversity does not reflect it in schools. And the educational system of Republic of Moldova has to improve in terms of teaching kids to speak languages, because for example, kids learn in Gagauzia, for example, kids learn Romanian and foreign language since the kindergarten till the last year of the high school, and they don't speak it actually. They don't speak it well to the extent that they can continue education in Romanian or in foreign language, which is actually the big problem, big issue.
Yeah. And then maybe the biggest issue and the biggest sign of fail from the perspective should be of the Ministry of Education is that now we have a generation where two Moldovans cannot talk to each other. Two citizens with the same passport, and somebody raised in a Russian-speaking family, and they can go to Russian-speaking schools. And like Michal said, Romanian is often taught not very well. So then they meet others, and they don't speak Russian. They have to. And if they then they're not skilled and don't know English, then they don't have any language. And this is a disaster for a country, I think, if people cannot talk to each other. So but here the ministry is afraid to promote Russian. I think it should be the first foreign language, and in other parts they are afraid to give up the Russian-speaking schools because they are afraid to lose their status as minority. So both are afraid, and then they cannot talk.
The disaster, yeah. Eckhart?
Yeah, well, just as my final word, I would like to thank the organizers for this event, because I think it's really important to put Moldova on the map, and on the mental map, I mean, and to keep an eye on the country even if there is not a big conflict. You know, normally small countries only get into the news when there is a big conflict or drama. I think we should not make the same mistake which we made in the Western Balkans, where we promised membership to countries and then didn't care about it. If you think about the Western Balkans, that the development of the whole region was blocked for many, many years because the Greeks and the Macedonians could not find an agreement who Alexander the Great was, who died, by the way, 323 before Christ. And so the whole process was held up because of that. So we should not make this mistake again. Moldova is not the paradise. Moldova is not free of problems, but it is an important, and by the way, also historic region, country, and we should really keep an eye on that and not just make some promises now and forget about them next year as we did in other parts of Europe. So let's learn from our mistakes. And therefore, thank you very much for setting that up.
Yeah, that were really good final words. Thank you, Eckhart. And in preparing for this event, I read a book about the history of Moldova. And by the way, I can really recommend it. It's from an English historian. Her name is Rebecca Haynes. It's just called History of Moldova. And I found that in medieval times, Moldova was a kind of commercial hub between the Baltic Sea countries and also the Flemish countries in the nowadays Netherlands and the Black Sea region. And I found that they were also connected to the Hanse, the association, the commercial or the trade association of the Hanse, which is at a very strong base also in Bremen. And I think perhaps we can revive that in a certain way, that we keep on that or renew that relationship between Bremen and Moldova. I found that a very good historical situation, and it could be reflected again. Yeah, thank you very much to all panelists for your really interesting contributions here tonight. I think really we learned a lot, and I know the country from several or many visits, but today I got again so many new information. I think that was very helpful. So really big thank to you, big clap, and also thanks EuropaPunktBremen that you co-organized this event tonight with us. And in this sense, I would like to hand over to Horst again.
Yeah, thank you very much also from my part for this very interesting discussion tonight. I just wanted to direct your interest perhaps on our webpage, europe.bremen.de, where you can see a couple of other events we are organizing in the coming days. I think the curiosity about Moldova has definitely been stirred, and I think we will have a follow-up on that discussion, hopefully in the near future. Thank you very much for everybody contributing and helping in the background, and I hope that we're going to meet again very soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, take care.
Ich verabschiede mich auch. Ciao.
Dankeschön. Tschüss.
Dankeschön. Danke euch. Ciao.
Einen schönen Abend. Vielen Dank. Sie sind stumm geschaltet, Herr Stranschulte. Man kann Sie
Ja, wo liegt der Unterschied? Ich wollte nur sagen, also vielen Dank und feiern Sie weiter in Bremen, je nachdem, ob es was zu feiern gibt oder nicht. Oder ja, trauern Sie oder machen Sie sonst noch was Schönes mit dem Abend.
Sie ebenfalls.
Ja, hier gibt's, in Berlin gibt es nichts zu feiern. Ja? Also, da kann ich nur noch heimgehen. Dann mache ich das mal. Also, mach es gut. Ne?
Ja,
Tschüss. Schönen